Here we go. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Awesome. This, of course, is episode number 2 with Chris M. Sprague. And yes, as a great reminder, there's the show notes. We've got the websites for Chris and for me, and we got some information. Hey, everybody, I just want to tell you, if you're tuning in just now to episode number 2, my guest, again, Chris M. Sprague, he is the International Transformation and Empowerment Ambassador. He's here to tell you that not everyone can be whatever they want to be in life. He's going to tell you how to find out what you might be good at. Welcome, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Jim. So I can see by the look in your eyes, Jim. It's taking you a little bit to process this, and that's okay. The interesting thing is most people I deal with in our industry, it does take them a while to process. Let me kind of lay it out a little more for the viewers and kind of maybe give everybody a little bit more to wrap their head around. Fact of the matter is this: your body physically has a map inside of it, the DNA that tells it how tall you're going to be, how long your fingers are going to be, how small, how big, all that other stuff. Your brain has that same map inside of it. The problem is that while the body isn't affected as much by the outside world, I mean, weight is definitely affected by advertising, but your body isn't so much affected by the outside world. Your brain is highly affected by the outside world. And over your life, most people's real purpose, their 0 point has been masked over. So by the time they hit adulthood, they don't really know what they were meant to do and what their 0 point was. They know what they think it is at that point. They know what they've been told it is, but they don't really know what it is. It's kind of like living in the matrix, so to speak. In other words, we've got the curtain pulled over our eyes. In the personal growth and development industry, it's very easy to tell people they can be whatever they want to be, because that gets people's hopes up. That pumps them up. That brings them up. That's it. They go, oh, I can get out of this situation. Well, coming from somebody who was very depressed, dead broke, literally just cheering when he could take his foot off the couch, I didn't want to hear another person look at me and tell me I could be anything I wanted to be, because that just made me feel worse. It put me in a situation to go, wait a minute. Hell, if I can be whatever I want to be, why the fuck am I laying on the couch? Oh, I'm that stupid at this point. So what I figured out is that, look, that instead of being whatever you want to be, your realistic, reasonable goal is to figure out what you were meant to be, what your 0 point is. And you have all the clues throughout your life to get there and to find that. Then once you understand what that is, you redefine what success means to you, and realize that you're going to live, I'll say, within your wiring, and it'll make you much, much happier. Now, people come to me all the time and say, well, let's look at somebody from basketball like a Muggsy Bogues or an Allen Iverson, who were undersized, thin. They should never have been able to play at the high level they did, but they did. Well, yeah, that's because that's how they were wired. They were wired to be that trendsetter, that deal breaker, that rule breaker. You look at a guy like Nick Vujicic, a professional public speaker who has no arms and no legs. People would say, well, aren't you saying that he was never meant to do that because he was always meant to look like an invalid? No, he was wired to take that message to the world, and he had that desire to take the message to the world. And that's what people really have to understand. Don't confuse the be anything you want to be, this whole pump you up, with the realistically be happy the rest of your, be happy the rest of your life. I don't know about you, Jim, but if you give me 2 choices, be anything I want to be or be happy the rest of my life, I'm choosing being happy the rest of my life, because that is hey, tell me I'm going to be happy the rest of my life. That's a great place to be.
Right. Well, and I mean, why do we all want this thing over here that we want to be anyway? It's so that we'll be happy. And what you're saying is that we may get there. Haven't we all done that? We've all gone after a goal, and then we got there and we said, wow, this wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be, I think it's a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
I'll give you a great example. One of the companies I own, at the beginning, I was nominated and I became the CEO. And it was funny because one of my goals had always been to be the CEO of a company. And literally the day it happened, I looked at my now ex-wife and went, yeah, okay. And It's like, yeah, okay, it's good. It's kind of funny, but you know, you're still right. It's like, because you have that promise that once you attain this, you inherently believe you're going to get that. So it's like, once you attain this level of being anything you want to be, you inherently feel you're going to be happy. And the thing of it is that this happiness is never guaranteed when you achieve what you think you want. But if you go after happiness and achieve happiness, then guess what? Happiness is guaranteed. If that's your goal, then it's guaranteed. So, you know, I'll give you another example. My mom, who we talked about in segment 1, who's passed away from cancer, retired. I met her. I'm adopted, and it's my birth mom. And I met her 20 some odd years ago. And I think about 15 years ago, I'll say, retired. And she was definitely not old enough to retire, but she just decided that she was kind of sick of working. And she was not rich. I swear, before she died, I really wish she had written a book on how to live on nothing, because since I've known her, she ended up physically building 2 houses, literally. Wow. And she was all of 5'0". And it was funny because I really wish I had the pictures of her and her life partner Art on the roof, flipping up trusses to build their one house. But and she died in Hawaii. Now, I don't know about you, but not working for the last 15 years of my life and dying in Hawaii and not having to really answer anybody kind of sounds like a lot of fun. But she achieved happiness. And she was very smart. She was very outspoken. She could have done a lot. And you know, and I'm not just prejudiced because she's my mom. She could have done a lot. But she decided, instead of being anything she wanted to be happy. And, you know, I'll tell you something. She died, I'm trying to think. I think she was finally 60-ish when she died. So, I mean, like I said, we're not talking about a 60-year-old that retired and lived. You know, she lived through the prime years where everybody's busting their hump working. Yeah. And she just did it on her own terms, as she went for happiness. So that's part of the other reason I'm so big on this, is that stop chasing the dream, chase what the dream means to you. Ooh, I need that too. Stop chasing the dream, chase what the dream means to you.
1238.
There you go. Right. But does that make sense?
You know, I got to tell you, you know what's fantastic about this too is that if she would have waited until she retired, she might not even have made it to retirement before she got to. She wouldn't to go to Hawaii and die. Right.
Yeah, she actually died definitely before her retirement age was eligible. And you know, she wouldn't have lived in multiple states across the United States and just up and decided to move to Hawaii. I mean, I got a kick out of it. I'll never forget the story. She liked to do some woodworking and everything. Her and Art were very handy. So they had a friend who moved to Hawaii, asked him to come out and do some work on the house. And when she got back, you know, they had just moved into another house they had built by themselves. And the minute she got back and the minute she started talking, I said, "You're moving to Hawaii, aren't you?" And she goes, "No, we're happy here." And I went, "No, you're moving. I can hear the sound in your voice." And she says, "Well, maybe in a year." And 8 months later, I get the call. "Yeah, we're selling the house and moving to Hawaii. We found something out." I'm calling. You know, she's like, "We're just leaving everything here. We're taking this little thing because it's just, you know." So yeah, don't chase the dream, chase what the dream really represents, which is that happiness, that security, that safety, that, you know, that good life for yourself.
And don't wait. You know, I just realized about a month, actually it was about a month ago, and I said, you know, I've always wanted to travel. I haven't done as much travel as I've wanted to, and I keep waiting until I have all the finances, until, you know, whatever, all these different things are in line. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to take off for the summer. I'm going to go visit my mom, go visit some friends, family, take the whole summer. I'm not ready for it. And that's okay. I'd rather do it now, because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? You know, I mean, I may not make it to retirement. You know, who knows? Might as well do some traveling now. So, folks, don't put it off. You never know when the end is there, and do it now, really. So, Chris, I know I'm sure. I mean, this sounds like something that probably takes quite a lot of work and time to figure out this 0 point. but can you tell us just a few tips on how we might, come closer to it, get an idea of where our 0 point is?
Sure. And in the end, to really get there, you're right, Jim, it does take a long time. It's a journey. Let's face it. If you're 20 years old, it took you 20 years to get where you're at right now. You can't expect to get to where you should be in 2 minutes. It's going to take you, I'm not saying it'll take you all 20 years, but let's face it, it's just like weight. If it took you 10 years to put on 100 pounds, it's going to take you, it might only take you 5, but it's not going to take you a month to cut all that weight. So the short version is that you start from where you're at, you work your way backwards, and you work your way all the way back until you find your first vivid, visual, positive memory, and that gives you your starting point. It's not necessarily your 0 point, but it's your starting point. You then use that starting point and work your way back through the rest of your life to find the common thread. And then you start to put all that together, and that gives you all the clues necessary to figure out what your 0 point actually was.
Excellent. Excellent. So let me see if you, let's look some of these questions I have here. Let's see. So if I were going to do this, maybe I could just start journaling this. I could start looking back. I could even use, we could even use hypnosis. I could do regression therapy to go back in time and kind of get a better, better image of what things were like then. I'll tell you, what about people that have a tough time remembering their childhood? I hear that a lot.
Yeah, the interesting part is that your brain, and it's funny because I've been saying this for the last year and a half, and now brain research is finally catching up. I was going to say, I always love it when it happens, when you come out and you prove something in the real world, and then it just takes science a while to kind of catch up. But I think it was either D News or Discovery Channel published a report that brain researchers are finally saying that yes, your brain captures every single thing you do on a daily basis, and it remembers everything. And all you have to do is put the neurons together, and you can recall it. The reason people don't realize that is because people do struggle to remember. They struggle to remember yesterday, or last week, or last month, or last year, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. If that's you, what you want to do is you remember the most recent vivid visual positive memory, and then you go backwards. And here's what I mean. The minute you go back, if you remember something that happened 5 years ago, your brain, for an instant, depending on how powerful that memory is, feels like it's 5 years ago. And it resets and says, okay, I feel like I'm back 5 years ago. And at that moment, it's kind of like leaping backwards. And you say, okay, let me remember back a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. Let me give you another example. When we all grew up, a lot of us went through PE, physical education, gym class, whatever you want to call it. And they used to do these rope tests where you used to hang a rope from the ceiling, put it about, like a foot off the ground, have these little knobs on it, and they make you climb the rope as high as you can. Well, let's face it, you can't get to 10 feet by just jumping and grabbing up 10 feet, or let's say 15 feet. Maybe some people can jump that high. So what you would do is you would grab about 2 foot up on the rope, and you put your feet on the bottom, and you pull yourself up, and you keep pulling yourself up. That's the same thing the brain does when you remember back, when you remember and you go backwards to remember. Now, that's how you do it without hypnosis. Now, I'll clarify this by saying, Jim, you and I have never worked together through hypnosis. I know a lot of good hypnotists, and I know a lot of bad hypnotists. And what I mean by that is I know a lot of people who do it the right way, and I know a lot of people who will guide their patients in completely the wrong direction, and not necessarily implant memories, but really take them through guidance and not let them guide themselves. So I don't know exactly how you do it. I'm going to guess by being on your podcast that you're one of the good guys, and you kind of let the patient go in the direction they want to go in. I've always talked, and I'll be in full transparency, I never use hypnosis in what I do because I believe that people can get there on their own, and I believe for most people it's a clearer vision. And I have said on other podcasts, if people have listened, that I never said any hypnosis is bad, but the way I always talk about it is I believe without hypnosis you get a clearer vision only because you're going back and you're doing it completely on your own. However, if you're one of the good guys, which I believe you are, and you let the patient go back, I can definitely see where hypnosis is helping and clearing the mind and relieving some of the fog that's there so that they can go back further and possibly go back quicker to find that initial memory, that initial vivid visual positive memory, versus the the coaching method, which just takes them back, and you just kind of think, okay, what's this memory? They go this memory, this, and go back further.
Yeah, very good point. And you know what? If you are using a hypnotist, and if you are a hypnotist, you want to be really careful about that. That's one of the things that happened back in the '80s when they had the big thing with all these kids having these memories, these quote memories of being abused and satanic cults and everything. It was because unfortunately the therapist wasn't, and it wasn't just hypnotherapists, it was also psychologists, unfortunately kind of leading them in a way that wasn't good. You definitely have to know what you're doing there. And so if you don't know what you're doing, probably don't do it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't practice on your clients. Learn it. Because there is you got to watch your language, and I just mean like the languages you use and the descriptions and things like that. So very good point. Chris, you have done a lot of things. You do a lot of things. If you had only one thing in the world to do, what would it be?
Yeah, and so I'm laughing because every time I tell this story, I picture the story in my head first, and I always get a kick out of it. So if I only had one thing in the world to do, it would be speak and take the message out to the world. And I always tell people that how the natural question is kind of like, how would you like to die? And that's not really a natural question, but it's kind of the one thing in the
Hawaii.
world. Yeah, in Hawaii. No, so I tell people, okay, I'm a guy, so yes, there's the natural guy way of dying, in the middle of having sex with a gorgeous woman. Other than that,
in Hawaii.
Yeah, in Hawaii, on the beach.
Right.
No GoPro camera though. It's just not But no, other than that, if I know that I've got one day left, here's what I'm going to do. Find a stage somewhere, put me on a stool on a stage, get anybody around me who still likes me, let me talk until I keel over. Then once I drop over, throw me in a coffin, put me in the ground, and be done with it. The point is, this is what I love to do. I love to talk. I love to, as we used to say in John Maxwell team, I used to have my little 2 a.m. holding court meetings where I'd go down and it'd be like 2 a.m. There'd be a dozen of us around, and there'd be like 11 people sitting around. I'd just be telling stories, and this is me, and this is what I love to do. The interesting part is that when I used to tell that story, it used to sound very self-serving and self-fulfilling. I want people to listen to me. Here's the point I want people to get out of that story. The reason I do this, the reason I come on shows like this, the reason I love telling stories, the reason I love doing this is because I love helping people. Yes, that gives me a charge. Yes, I'm self-centered. Yes, I got an ego that can't get out my door at some points. That's okay. In the end, and I say that's okay because I love helping people. And that's really where the charge comes from. I mean, I'll sit here and cry, and when somebody sends me an email and tells me that I've changed your life, I'll sit here and cry at night. I mean, I've cried on podcasts before because that's what touches me, and that's my personality. So put aside the boisterousness and everything else. If I only had one thing to do, it'd be doing interviews and talk shows and things like this, and being on video and sharing this message, because it changes people's lives. It helps people to live a better life, and that's in the end. I mean, I get a lot of energy from doing this. But where I get my fulfillment is when people write to me and say, hey, Chris, you changed my life. Or, hey, Chris, I implemented this and my life is at least a little bit better. Or, I'm now finally talking to my wife because, I was scared to talk to her before because I didn't think she'd understand the personal growth industry. And I realized that it was either that or lose her completely. And I loved her, so I wanted to talk to her. It's stuff like that. So.
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me, I've said this on the podcast before, and one of my favorite quotes is the Zig Ziglar one that says, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And so it's fine to have that. I think it's fine to have that ego. I've got it too. And I like attention. I'm sorry, I do. I like to get attention. And but as long as I think as I'm doing it, with a positive intent, trying to help other people, and then they're helping me with the attention, that's great. It's funny when we talk about the 0 point thing and you tell that story. I can remember very clearly of being about 5 years old and doing it was singing O Tannenbaum in front of the whole school. And it was like the most wonderful experience of my life. In that moment, unfortunately, the guy I did it with was the school bully, and he beat me up afterwards because he didn't remember his part and I did. But that one little part, it was funny. As I think back on it, I think that the teacher actually thought that us doing it together would bring us together, because he always picked on me before that, and it had the opposite effect, unfortunately. But it was still that performing in front of everybody. Just wow! I can still remember that so clearly, so clearly.
Yeah, and that's great. And mine is very similar. I mean, I remember back when I was 5 years old, it was either 4 or 5, because it was either in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten. I was in a play. It had something to do with the wizard. All I remember is I was dressed up as a wizard. I said something magical over this oven. It was something about a magic oven, and there was a kid inside the oven pushing cotton balls out. That's all I remember. But I remember that having fun. And it's something that in episode 1 we talked about creativity, and we talked about how the heck does somebody go from being on stage to being in the IT world, information technology, to them circling back to doing what we're doing here. And I said about the common thread of creativity, and that's the big key. When you go through, if you take a look, I said also earlier about the fact that I had kind of been in this fog where I thought I was meant to be a leader because I didn't want to be bullied, and I kind of didn't realize that, actually you took more arrows as the leader, and I didn't realize that my thought process was completely off. When I started stripping all that fog away, and I went back and I found that first vivid visual positive memory of me being, in that play and that fun, I then looked back throughout my life, and what I realized is all the happiness and everything, and all the times that I was successful, I was creative. It didn't matter what field I was in. It was the creativity. And then that led to happiness. That also led to changing people's lives and everything else. And we don't have enough time to, as one of my mentors, Paul Martinelli, says, I don't have at my command time today to tell everything about it. But point is I saw all this creativity flow through, and it didn't matter what position, I was in. That was kind of, that was one of the things where the key was. And creativity, inspiration, motivation, also talking. That was the other thing that I looked at. I've been a talker, quote unquote, all my life. I mean, I remember, I tell the story, it's going to sound kind of bad because I realize how bad it sounds, but my adopted dad, I used to get on his nerves so much at some points that he used to say, look, can I just read my paper? So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but but the point is that I used to love to talk throughout my entire life. So, put talking, creativity, everything else together, and that ends up becoming a recipe for not only doing the international transformation and empowerment ambassador role that I do, but also doing the video and the other thing I do with some of the other companies that I own. So.
Yeah, I invite you to check out Chris's website. You have links to the other projects on your Chris M. Sprague website.
They're at the top of that site.
Thought so, yeah. So I invite you to check that out. He's got a lot of good stuff going on over there. He's connected with a lot of other professionals and inspirational folks, and I think you could really learn a lot from not just Chris, but through his association with the other ones as well. Chris, what can we start? What can our guests, our listeners, do today? What could they start on today to start transforming their life, living that life they're intended to live, or figuring that out? What can they do today?
Yeah, the biggest thing you could do today is tonight before you go to bed, about 15 minutes before you go to bed, think of a question that you want an answer to. Now, before everybody goes, wait a minute, I want to sleep, I don't want my brain working. Here's what you have to understand. That your subconscious is the most powerful supercomputer known to man. And whatever you're thinking about 15 minutes before you go to bed is what your brain is going to work on while you sleep. It's not going to prevent your brain from shutting down. All it's going to do is allow your subconscious to process it. And it's going to allow you to get answers without having the gate that your conscious mind puts on you. I can go over more of that. We can do another episode about that because it's really a deep topic. What I really want you to understand as a viewer is you think about that question 15 minutes before you go to bed. Let your subconscious help to work on an answer. Then when you get up in the morning, see what answer you got and write it down. Do that on a consistent basis because sometimes it takes a little practice, just like anything else worth doing sometimes takes a little practice. So you might not get a visible answer the first night, and it might even be something where during the next day it just kind of blurts out. Like, have you ever had, Jim, I'm sure you've gone through this, where you look at somebody's face and go, I remember their name, but I don't know it. And then like 6 hours later, they're in another state. You're sitting there, you're driving a car, and you go, Jim Kellner. And it's like,
right.
And then, whoever's in the car with you going, who the heck are you talking about? It's like, I was just trying to figure out who this guy was, 6 hours ago. It's the same thing when you end up asking yourself a question like that at night. It might not come to you in your dreams. It might not come to you till the next day, but you're going to start finding that you're going to get the answer. And then you start refining that and ask yourself better quality questions. This is a process that just opens you up to thinking differently. Because the problem with most people is that their brains lock them in to keep them at a steady state, and that's what your brain was designed to do. The really short version is that the reason people don't change is because change is fearful, and it's not just fearful on a conscious level, but it's fear on a subconscious level to their brain, because their brain has been made to keep them. Consistency is good. When we were hunter-gatherers, change was never good, because change could mean we're going to die. When you're out in the plane, not seeing another thing, and all of a sudden there's something walking up to you, it could be a predator about to eat you.
Yeah.
So the real short version is that you start off by asking yourself these questions. You let your brain get over that fear and realize that change is good. You ask yourself better questions. Then you start working on a process to find your 0 point.
Yeah, physically we call that homeostasis. When the body keeping everything regulated in a very, very tightly. That's a great point too, Chris. I think that people need to understand that just because you're afraid of something doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means it's outside your comfort zone. And there's some great quote I just saw not that long ago. It said that life begins out, at the end of your comfort zone or something like that. You're never going to get anywhere if you don't do something that's a little bit scary. Like, I'm sure your mom probably was a little bit afraid about retiring when she couldn't afford to, right?
I'm guessing she was, but if I remember, she was. I probably shouldn't say this in case he's watching, but I have a feeling she was just really pissed off. I finally had enough of the boss she was with, and just said, you know what? I don't need this shit anymore. I'm kind of
great.
Great.
Let that take over then.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, it's funny, because if you really hear that point, and man, we're running up against the top of the hour. We don't have to do episode 3 on this thing. We'll just keep going forever. But no, if you really hear what happened was, if I remember the story right, and I might be getting it wrong, so Mom, if you're watching, I'm sorry if I get this wrong. But what happened was the frustration overrode the need to stay constant. So the pain was great enough to basically say, I've got to do something different. And then she did something, and then she did something different. And then she did something different and found a way to make it work. So take that story back to, if you're watching this right now, take that story back, whether it's going to Jim and going through hypnosis with him, whether it's coming to me and working on finding your 0 point, just, through talking through coaching. When your pain gets to a certain point, you're going to make the change. One of the things I like to say is, why do you want to let it get that far? If the pain isn't that intense, because believe me when I tell you, if the pain is there already, it probably isn't going to get much better. Let's face it, the pain for my wife and I was there. If I would have just seen it, my ex-wife, I would have just seen it. The pain was there and wasn't going to get any better. And it wasn't until the pain got very bad, i.e. she's out the door, that things, started to change. In fact, I didn't get off of being a strictly leadership coach and speaker for probably about 8 to 9 months after she left. And it was at the time when she was gone. In other words, at the time that the pain was really bad. Because let's face it, everybody at the beginning of a breakup thinks, hey, they're going to come back, be a success, and they're going to come back. So the point is why let it get to that point? Why let it get to be so nasty and so painful? Don't kid yourself. The pain isn't going to go away and get any better. It's kind of like having a toothache. You got a toothache, go to the dentist and at least get it checked out. Because if it is a cavity forming, guess what? It ain't going to get any better. You can have all the great toothpaste in the world and all the great mouthwash in the world, but if you got a hole forming in your tooth, unless you get it filled, it ain't getting any better.
That's exactly right.
And by the time it gets really bad, you're going to go in for a root canal. And even though you might hate the dentist, I don't know. You give me the choice between a filling and a root canal. I'm choosing the filling. It's cheaper and it's less painful. So, come to Jim and I and get your filling. Don't wait to get your root canal, which is the divorce and losing everything, losing a house and, living in a place with no running water and no toilet and everything else. I mean, you don't want to end up like me. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you that. I didn't tell you that part of the story where, they're the complete loss of the house and then, being homeless and moving into a place with no running water and no toilet and, basically squatting in the whole 9 yards. So yeah, don't let it, you don't want to go through the root canal.
Exactly. I think that's it seems to be one of the hallmarks of being any kind of a transformational coach is these really difficult times that people go through, and I think it also it builds you up, and I also think it gives you I don't know if I want to say credibility, but something like that with other people, because they go, well, I'll tell you one of the things that bugs me. There's a couple of speakers out there right now that are pretty popular, and I never hear anything. I'm not going to mention any names because he's very popular, but he will talk about from the time that he was very industrious and all this stuff ever since he was a little kid. And I used to love all of his stuff, and now I'm kind of turned off by it because I'm like, I can't relate to him because it seems like he's been perfect this entire time. And like people like Anthony Robbins talk about their struggles and things like that. And I even remember this one guy I used to listen to his podcast, and he talked about he was always talking about life hacking type stuff, and he talked about he was going to do a 30-day challenge where he exercised every day, and then he said, I didn't think I'd have too much trouble with it because I've always been an exerciser. And I was like, well, great, this guy's perfect. I mean, what? I can't relate to this. I need some imperfection from my leaders, I guess.
Well, and the interesting thing you bring that up is because I think it's a natural progression people go through, and there are very few people who really have led that charmed life. And let's face it, maybe there's one or two out there. What I realized at the beginning was I was trying to gloss over the challenges I had in my life at the beginning anyway, because I believed that if people saw those imperfections, they wouldn't follow me as a leader. And what I didn't realize is that I should have not overblown them, but I should have brought them out. I should have brought the bullying out. I should have talked about that stuff more to make me more personable. As I said, I think on the first episode, before I went through the divorce and everything else, I kind of looked and felt I had pretty much an average life, some ups, some downs, and everything. And I kind of looked up and said, I don't have hey God, I don't have a story. And I didn't realize how much of a sense of humor God was going to have. And by the end of the story, I went, you know what? Okay, I'm done. I got it's enough now. I got the story. I get it. I get it. I shouldn't. I'll specify next time. I'll specify it next time, please. Just enough with the story here. I got it. That was kind of in December when Mom finally passed away, and that was an interesting day because that weekend I was speaking at a Ken MacArthur JV Alert Live event. Ken MacArthur now runs the Impact Factory. He's doing a movie called The Impact Movie. Great guy. I'll never forget. It was Friday. I had just gotten done sealing the deal with Dr. Mark to start what would be the Professional Practice Builder Society and everything else. We got back in the room and I get this phone call, and as you all know, it's from Hawaii, so I'm going, okay, this can't be good. I get the call that my mom passed away, and 2 days later I've got to be on stage giving a talk at Ken's event. So yeah, that was kind of interesting and fun, but that was kind of the point. I said, okay, God, I got enough of the story now. It's, can we move on? We got the story, can we move on? But you're so right there, Jim. I really wish people, in fact, even Brendan Burchard, very successful guy, unless I'm hearing the story right, I believe that he was in Ken's circle years ago, and I think he started off as a children's author and was not very successful. If I've got the story wrong, Brendan, I apologize, but I kind of think this is what I heard. You don't hear him talk about that right now. And his struggle, he's out, or at least I don't in the stuff that I've watched from him. He might be in other cases, but I just haven't seen it. I think but you're right. I believe people should be following people who are real, who are realistic, but who are also successful. So be human, have those failures, And then what are you going to teach me from your failures? I'll be more apt to follow you and learn from you than if if everything you've touched has turned to gold every single time. If you're that kind of person, then get your own show. Maybe The Prophet, like Marcus Leonis, The Prophet, or be on Shark Tank. And you know what? You go out with that and just pay people money. Because if you're that successful and if you've never made any mistakes and you've got billions in the bank, hey, just come on, sponsor, pay us money. That's fine. We'll be happy to be a part of it. Be happy to be a part of it. Otherwise, if you're going to teach me something, let me know that you've been through the challenges before. Let me know you know where I've been so that I know you can help me to go where I'm going.
Yeah, it's funny you were mentioning that you used to kind of gloss over that too. I did the same thing, and I still struggle with that at times because even though I've reached a certain level of success, it's nowhere near where I want to be. For the longest time, I tried not to have any kind of challenges, mention any of that kind of stuff. And it was really, I was listening to this podcaster. His name is Dwayne Dyer. It's not Wayne Dyer. It's sorry, buddy, I forgot. It's the Making Shift Happen podcast, and he does that. I mean, from the very first episode, he talked about his challenges and even what he's going through right now. And I was like, this is the kind of guy that I can relate to. And that's when I started going, I need to be a little more relatable. I realized I'm not doing a very good job because I just got some hate mail my first hate mail last week from somebody who called me privileged and a bunch of things like that. And I was like, wow, all right, you don't know me.
I was gonna say, you seem like a down to earth, guy. Maybe that's because I'm doing all the talking here, and you're just letting me talk, which is great. So I like you, Jim. You let me talk. I like you.
All right, great.
But no,
it's my job. Let you talk.
The interesting part and the challenge becomes if you're starting a business and you have one client and you're in a coaching or speaking, it's tough to talk about only having one client when you only have one client, because it's people question, and that's what your brain is doing, right? Your brain is trying to say, hey, wait a minute, I can't be so vulnerable. The funny part is it's an arc, and this is what I want everybody to realize, and this is going way off topic, but it's an arc. There's a great story about Warren Buffett and the fact that he still drives like a 1975 station wagon. So he still drives like the car, but here's the arc you go through. And we'll use that as an example. When you're poor in 2015, you drive a 1975 station wagon and you hide it from people. You then become successful. And if it's a car you've had forever, when you become successful, you drive it and you really don't care. When you become ultra successful, you drive it and you brag about the fact that you have a 1975, station wagon, because you could have whatever you want, but you're driving this. So it's this weird arc that you go through. It's kind of like look at Mark Zuckerberg, a billionaire, but he wears a black T-shirt to work every week. Well, if you're poor and you can only afford a black T-shirt, you don't talk about the fact you wear a black T-shirt to work every week. When you get to be rich, you don't care. When you get to be ultra rich and ultra successful, you brag about it, but in a different way. He was asked one time why he says, because I want to reduce the number of choices. I've got a row of black T-shirts, and that's what I wear to work because I take as many choices out of my day as possible to leave my mind free to make the right choices and the right decisions during the day. Why should I wake up and have to decide what I'm gonna put on? Like I'll let you in on a little secret. Okay, you notice I got this green shirt on today. Well, if you watch Expert Showcase, you'll see me in black shirts every week because I've taken that decision out and I go, I'm wearing a black shirt. It took me like 20 minutes to figure out what I was gonna wear for your show today because I'm like, I don't really feel like wearing my black shirt. So what am I gonna wear? So I'm looking through I'm trying on different shirts. I had this T-shirt. I was gonna go, that doesn't look right. But the whole point is that, the whole point back to the arc. It's the same way with number of clients. Here's another great example. If you have 3 clients today and you're just starting, you don't advertise to people you don't have 3 clients because nobody wants to come on board. You become successful, you don't care about talking to people about how many clients you have. When you're ultra successful, what do? You release the exclusive coaching program that you only have 3. Notice the quotes I'm giving here, guys. You only have 3 spots open. The point is that you might still be very unsuccessful, really going to be having 3 people, but it's all in how you talk about it, and it's all in how you couch it. And at your different levels of success, you couch it differently. People who are Unsuccessful are afraid of talking about how many clients they have. People who are successful, mildly successful, don't really talk about it because they don't have to. They don't care. It doesn't really matter anymore because they're successful. They're more worried about their success. Then when they go ultra successful, all of a sudden it's a badge of honor. This is where I guess part of what I'm saying is, if you're back here and you only have 3 clients, figure out how to wear it as a badge of honor. Only because if you're really successful for those 3 clients, then there's no difference between you and somebody who has been ultra successful in other areas, running an exclusive coaching program. There's no difference between the 2 of you. So figure out how to wear it as a badge of honor. And I have no clue how we've gotten off on this topic, but this is kind of interesting.
It is very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good information today, everybody. I hope everybody who's watching is getting a lot of good information out of this. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up, Chris?
Here's the thing. And I got to pause for a second. I got to really slow down because I want everybody to take this in. That if you don't find your 0 point and you don't do what you were meant to do, you're depriving yourself and the world of what could have been. And I'm going to give you a couple of people that I want you to really think about and realize that if they hadn't found their 0 point, and if they hadn't found what they were meant to do, how much different our world would be. Think of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. Very altruistic people. They made definite changes. They weren't interested in being rich. They were interested in changing the world. They were interested in running major companies. They were interested in making people's lives better. Then you look at people like Bill Gates and Richard Branson and Steve Jobs. At the beginning, they were interested in helping people. They were interested in making money and making great businesses. I mean, look at Bill Gates. I mean, you know, even half of the stories are true and what he did to kind of build Microsoft. He definitely wasn't interested in helping people. Now he's one of the biggest philanthropists in the world because he built the business. And it's kind of, a lot of people are saying he's trying to make up for what he did at the beginning. And I'll tell you something, it took all that to get there. He's doing a real good job of making up for what he did. But the point was, at the beginning, he realized that his 0 point, what he was meant to do, was be an incredible businessman and an incredible visionary. And so it is with everyone watching here. Inside, there's a blueprint. There's your 0 point. Find it, live to, through, and within it, and you're going to live a happy and successful life. And that's about it.
Fantastic. Hey, everybody, if you're listening at Blog Talk, check him out, chrismsprague.com. Again, that's Chris M. Sprague, SPRAGUE.com. And of course, if you want information on hypnosis and all that kind of fun stuff, you can find me, JimKellnerHypnotist.com. I am booking now for holiday parties, so let me know if you would like me to come and hypnotize your boss to give you a raise. Who knows? All right. I want to thank Chris again. Thanks so much. Hey, remember, maybe you can't be anything you want to be, and that might be a good thing, everybody. If your goal is happiness, it's a lot easier to attain than something that's out of your reach. So I want to thank everybody for listening. This has been Exploring Awesome. Take care, everybody. Be well and be awesome. Chris, stick around. I'll talk to you for a second.
Okay.